So let me introduce us. My name is Albino Sánchez. I'm the founder and CEO of AHA Impact. AHA Impact is a consulting firm and coaching firm. We specialize in business transformations. And here we have with us Miriam Larios. Miriam is a partner and LATAM director for Acertare. Acertare is our partner. They are experts in change management, and they have been working on this for the last 20 years. So thank you, Miriam, for joining us today.
Super happy for being here, Albino. Thank you for the invitation.
My pleasure. All right, so thank you, everyone, for joining us. We're happy to have you here, and today we're going to talk about conquering work overload, strategies to succeed in business transformations. We're aware that nowadays we're living crazy times, right? After the pandemic, so many things have changed. We're seeing companies that are, struggling to survive. We're seeing companies that's struggling to grow. There's many layoffs everywhere. There's troubles, some struggling with the economy. So all this environment, and there's so many innovations coming with AI, with technology, and all this keeps on, raising the bar for all of us, all the companies, to be up to date with technology, up to date with the latest trends, and we need to, update. We need to be ahead of changes, right? And that's why we are sometimes overwhelmed, right? We have so many changes that we want to implement in our companies that our people are starting to, today everyone talks about burnout, right? And this is critical that we address the situation, and that's where we can help. We are experts on how to plan those changes, how to implement those changes, how to take care of your people, right? So that's very important. That's what we're going to talk about today. How to manage change in this type of environments where the companies are trying to be much more effective, to do more with less resources, and people are so busy. And now with hybrid working, remote working, all this complicates. And now we're trying to build the culture of the company, but how do we do it? And all those questions we're going to try to answer them today. What you're going to see today are some high-level approaches to change management, given we don't have much time, but we want to give you the most important messages so that you can get an idea on what's this approach to change management. We call this approach the ethical approach, and in a moment you're going to learn why. Now, so that we are more successful in the conversation and we address all the reasons why you joined us, we would like to ask you to share in the chat three things. First thing is, please share what's your current position in the organization you're working for. Then also please share what's your main challenge that you have right now regarding change? And please share your answer all together. These are the three questions, and please share the answer in one answer only. So your role, what's the main challenge you're having currently in your organization and in your role? And the third question is, how urgent is it for you to solve this challenge? So please write in the chat the answer to those three questions: your role, your main challenge, and how urgent is it for you to solve that challenge. Hello, Catherine from Walnut Creek. Welcome. And while you answer in the chat, we're going to go to the next slide, and this is an overview of what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to talk about transformation. What is transformation? There's several understandings on what transformation is. We're going to give you our definition according to our experience. Then, what do we mean by work overload? We can also name it saturation. Okay, and we're going to talk in a moment about that. Then capacity. What's capacity for change? Or change capacity? What's that about? How do we create more capacity in our organization to undergo or to implement change? And the fourth topic for today is what are we going to do about it? What are some insights that we can get from this webinar that can help us implement a successful change? All right, so we have some answers here in the chat. We see Catherine, you're board chair of a nonprofit organization, and your challenge is keeping board members motivated and engaged via remote culture. Is a high priority issue. Okay, how to keep them motivated through remote culture. Nice, thank you, Catherine, for sharing. Miguel, I'm a business owner. My challenge is to improve the financial position of the company, generating positive cash by automating flows, and this is urgent. Excellent. Thank you, Miguel, for sharing. And throughout the webinar, please all feel free to share your questions, comments here in the chat. We'll be happy to interact with you throughout the webinar. All right, so let's go to the first topic. We're going to talk about transformation. What is transformation, and what does transformation imply? So, why are we using here this type of images? Transformation nowadays has a lot to do with technology, right? And that's something that's part of organizations, part of our culture now. And when we talk about transformation, it's not just, for example, if we think about implementing a software that's going to change many processes. For example, an ERP, a CRM. Yes, we're going to change many processes, but I'm not so sure that that's a transformation. Let's think about other bigger projects. Let's think about when you change your business model, or when you change your approach to market, when you change the way you serve your clients, or you launch a new product. Those are more, they are more like a transformation, or maybe a merger or an acquisition. That's where we talk about what we're talking about when we talk about transformation. And if on top of that you use a software to automate that, or to help implement those changes, then we're talking about digital transformation. Okay, so transformation is more about a bigger shift in the way you do business, right? And many times transformation requires a lot of different changes, and all those changes start to be cumulative, right? And if we are not careful with that, the sum of all those small changes or big changes may become a congestion, a saturation. Okay, so that's what we're talking about today. How to prevent that saturation, that congestion of the sum of changes when we are trying to implement a transformation. Okay, and we have to be aware of our capacity to undergo those changes, because each company has a limited capacity to implement those changes, and we need to be aware of that. Okay, and then we need to be aware of what we need to do to amplify that capacity. Now, during the rest of the webinar, we're going to talk about how to amplify that capacity, how to manage that saturation, or how to prevent that saturation. All right. So transformation implies many changes, and there's a risk of saturation or work overload. Now, what is your purpose? And this is something very important. Whenever we are planning a transformation, whenever we're planning on implementing a change, we need to make sure that there's an important reason behind it. There's a purpose. There's a motive, right? So that's why we are asking here. What is your purpose and the meaning you pursue when managing change? And obviously it's really important that your people know what's that reason. We need to share that. What does really motivate you or not to contribute to the realization of change? We have seen many executives that plan these big changes, and they've been planning this for maybe 6 months or 1 year, and they've been talking to a few other executives, and then all of a sudden they decide to implement it and to communicate it, and they think that maybe with a poster, an email, and a short video, that will be enough for people to understand it and people to comply and collaborate. But that's really far from the reality. That's not enough, and we need to really communicate what's the purpose behind it, and we need to really make sure that people understand our purpose, right? So the key concept in our approach to change management is putting the people at the center of the change, right? That's what we call ethical change management. We need to respect the people may not be understanding what we want to achieve with change, and we need to really be clear on that. Also, we need to understand that maybe people are not prepared for this, and we need to be aware of that, and that many times we say people are resisting to change, right? That's something that we hear a lot when we talk about change management. But what we have learned through the years is that it's not that people are resisting, but when people resist is when they are not taken into consideration in the first place. People don't want to be forced to do something. People don't, in a trivial example, for example, as a parent, you want to take your kid to the shower, right? The shower, and the kid is resisting to go to the shower. That's when people are resisting to something. That's where what we call resistance. But what if you take them into consideration and not just force them? And what if you prepare them for that change? If you train them, if you ask them what are their concerns, so that's putting them, involve them, right? That approach is a more ethical approach, and we use that's why in our framework we use a sand clock, an hourglass, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. Now, when this sum or this accumulation of changes start overwhelming people, right? What happens is that our capacity for change starts depleting, starts diminishing. When people, many times people are not open to change. They may think, okay, here comes the new consultant, or here comes the new CEO with new ideas, and this has not worked before. So people are not open to change, and that reduces the capacity of the organization for change. So we need to address that. We need to prepare for that, and we need to ensure We need to be closer to people and address those concerns so that we can increase the capacity for change. And when we share that the purpose, when we share what's driving us to make this transformation, and we take them into consideration, then we start increasing the capacity for transformation. Okay, and those stress levels are more manageable. Okay, and also there's a concept here when we talk about these stress levels. Many times we are generating those stress levels by the way we are implementing this change. When we don't take into consideration people, and we just tell them what they need to do, and we're expecting them to do a lot of new things on top of their day-to-day job, right? So that's how we leaders start creating that resistance. The resistance is created by us. But if, on the other hand, we really prepare that change and we do it in a professional way, and we use the tools that some of them we're sharing here, then we're not going to get resistance, but we're going to get these reactions to change. And that's different, right? Because what we want is people to comply, or better than that, we want people to want to change, right? And there's ways that we can approach them so they want to change. And then we're gonna, when we are implementing, we're gonna see some reactions, and then we can address them. But that's different. That's not resistance. Feel free to share your comments in the chat anytime, so we can also, or your questions, we're going to be happy to answer them. Now, let's go a little deeper with saturation. The common belief in change is that the capacity for change is determined by the ability to make changes. The ability that has the organization to make changes, but that's not always true. It's not just enough to have a project management office. It's not just enough to have some people trained in change management. That's not enough. But we need to take into consideration other factors. And the first important factor to take into consideration is a biological factor. We humans have a limited attention span. And for example, we've seen that there's organizations that they say, hey, yes, we have priorities here. And you ask them, okay, how do you, what's your criteria? Well, actually, everything is priority number one. So that's not helping, right? And people are saturated because they are called to attend, 3 or 4, different meetings for 2 or 4 different projects. They have to do their day-to-day operations, and they need to go to another training, etc. So the biological factor here says that we are only able to concentrate on 2, 3, or 4 things at a time, right? So we need to take that into consideration, and we need to calculate what are the impacts of change. Let's use an analogy here. Imagine that we are building a house or a building. We need to calculate. We need to calculate what's the weight that the columns need to support. We need to, in order for to be able to have a second floor, for example. And then from those calculations, we need to decide if we're going to strengthen the column, or we're going to reduce the weight on top. So we take that analogy to our change management practice. We need to calculate what are the impacts of this initiative, and what do we have to take into consideration how many people we're going to impact, and not just that. If we're going to impact, what percentage of the company is going to be having that impact? If we're going to impact a complete department or not, and all those considerations are part of our calculations, so we can make sure that we are not affecting this biological factor at an individual level. Okay. Now, the second element that we need to take into consideration to avoid this saturation is the expectations. I was telling you before that if people are not open to change, and they are, a common saying where we say this has never worked here, right? That's something that we get a lot when we help organizations. And when people are, not open to these innovations or these new approaches, then the capacity for change is small. Okay, the level of expectation about the extent to which it changed may determine the outcome. So let's check what are the expectations right from the beginning. What would people think about this? Are they positive or not? So that's something important to take into consideration right from the beginning. The more negative an individual is about the outcome, the lower their disposition will be. Okay. The third element to take into consideration is quantity and level. So I was telling you about to quantify the impacts. Okay, what's the number of impacts on the same person in a given period of time? So how much, additional to their daily operations, how much additional things we're going to ask from them? How many projects that they're going to participate in? How many training sessions, etc. So we need to quantify these impacts, and are we impacting just one department or the whole company, or maybe just the executive team, the C-suite? It's different. The different type of implementations and transformations according to the impacts and the people that we are impacting. Okay. So now, if we go to the what influences the change capacity. What we're talking about here is the nature and the purpose of change. Not all changes are the same type of change. Okay, I was telling you about mergers and acquisitions. I was telling you about changes in the business model. So we need to make sure what's the nature of change and its purpose. Some changes may affect stronger to more people or strongly to key people in operations, for example. What's the impact of each change? So how many changes, at what level, how many people? And also we need to take into consideration the environment. So what's happening with the organization? Maybe the change comes from a financial struggle that the company has, and this change is going to help the company to turn around the financial situation. So that's one scenario. But there's other scenarios. For example, a company that's successful and that's growing, and they're buying a competitor. So that's a different change and a different approach. So we need to take that into consideration when we are building the strategy for change. Another aspect is leadership for change. Is our leadership team prepared for change? Have they done this type of transformations before? Are we having some help from experts, outside experts maybe? So all this is important to review. And the first bullet is key: socialization. The change has to be socialized. And this is something we do a lot in our approach. Whenever we help our clients to implement change, we tell them that change has to be socialized. We need to speak to all people in all levels of the organization through workshops, so that we listen to them. We interact with them about the change, about the impacts. And many times, for example, when we are communicating the change, the project or the initiative, then we divide the team into different smaller teams, and we ask to each one of those smaller teams, what did you understand about the change? And what we have found is that many times, they understand different things. That's something we need to really address. Okay, we need to really identify what are the different understandings on change. And the fifth element that influences change is the ability for change. And we need to review what's the current structure. Does change need to change the structure on the organization? What processes, operational processes, need to change? What resources we need? Do we need to have to bring in experts in what topic, right? So we need to evaluate all this so that we can increase the ability for change. Okay, we need to enable the organization for change. So these are the five main elements we need to take into consideration so that we can amplify our capacity for change.
Albino, thank you. Because regarding this, I think this topic is very relevant to click in, because the information is very interesting. Thank you very much. You made me recall what I have been through in different occasions regarding working with multinational companies about their change capacity and what happens to the executives who has to lead these transformations in the organization. So I have noticed that one of the situations that arise in organizations is that implementing several projects, as you say, at the same time, or some of them with high impact initiatives, is that not always there's a team focused on communicating why the project is aligned to the strategy and is aligned to the business that the company needs to result. So this is more difficult to manage when there's not a team focused on that matter. With this saying, I mean that if the project doesn't know how to communicate, they can often fall into referring to people's project, like John's project or Karen's project, instead of projects belonging to the company and led by people. There is not the project of someone, is the project of the company aligned to the business strategy. And when there's not a strategy to communicate within the company, it's very difficult to manage. The other day we were talking about this experience that I remember when we were about to start a project in a multinational energy company. We met with the project manager director, who was the controller of the organization, and he had to take on this new role as the project was of great impact. Almost 75% of the processes of the operation would be changed with implementation of a system with an ERP. So we met with him, and I remember that he was very skeptical about change management, and why would he have to invest in another team doing what was change management? Why the change of the organization had to be taken care of someone else. So I remember that we started the conversation asking him, how many executives are there in the company? How many executives are there? And he said something around 10 executives. And then we asked how many of them, of the team of the executives, were involved in the decision of implementing the system. And he stared at me and he said, probably 3 or 4. So we told him, well, then I can predict that close to 70% of the executives may be against the project. And you will have to dedicate your time, your team's time, to generate sessions and reports with a lot of effort to communicate and clarify doubts and questions that everyone who was not involved in the project, because they will probably have reactions of resistance that, because of not being involved, you will have to deal with. So it was very interesting conversation, Albino, because managing the whole environment means that you will have to, as change manager, have to have conversations with executives that doesn't understand why change has to be managed. So I was telling him that it's better to have a team that expertly dedicate their time to identify the possible reactions that this project may cause in the organization, or with key people, in order to generate a strategy that would be proactive in attention, and not have your team reacting to situations that is different from the technical issues that you have to manage. So these kind of project change that implies change usually bring a lot of attention to other people, not only the people that work in the company, but the decision makers as well. So we told him, don't manage this change alone. We will help you to create this project, and will not be Daniel's project. It will be company's project, led by you. And everyone will have to do their part, participating as a network. So we will help you to build this network in order for attend these stress levels and the several projects that are going through the companies. And I remember that at that moment he literally told us that this is what he needed, and he wanted to work with us because he doesn't wanted to feel alone. Like all the stress that it was going on through all the things, he didn't want it to be the only face to talk about the project. And when he understood that we had to create the purpose of change and communicate it not only to the people in the company, but to his peers, and understand the impact of change, who will be impacted, what other issues were taken care of within the organization, and that he needed to build this network to not work alone. And it was a very interesting process, Albino. So this is a very important thing to analyze when you are in a process of change and transformation, as you said.
Totally. Thank you, Miriam, for sharing. Yes, absolutely. It's so important to understand from the beginning how many from the executive team, how many of them were involved from the beginning, right? Because if not, they're not going to be most likely helping or collaborating because they felt that they were not taken into consideration. So that's something we need to be careful with. And also regarding strategy, it's very important to align our transformation projects to the company's strategy, as you were saying. And also to a change management project needs to have sponsorship, needs to have the right resources, needs to have the professional people that are going to really do things following the best practices so that we can be more successful. When we don't use professional practices, there's more risk to have saturation. There's more risk to have our big initiatives that they are, not on time, not on budget, right? Because we're not preparing people for that. We're not, addressing their reactions, right? Because we're, that's the important part, that we really build these change management projects as strategic projects, and we really take a professional approach to it so that we can have much more success in our initiatives. Now, what to do? And we talk here about disruption without destruction. And what do we mean by that? We need to energize energize a company, we need to energize the individual, energize people. And if we use an analogy here, we see this electric car. You know why electric cars are much more faster than regular gas cars? The main reason is that each one of the tires has their own engine. Okay, that's one of the main reasons. There's many others, right? But if we use this analogy that each tire has its own engine, now let's take it to the company. Imagine that each one of the individuals, each one of our employees becomes an engine for change. That they really are on board with the change. They are not convinced. They really want. They volunteer because they understand the purpose. They feel heard. They feel understood, and so they become an engine. That's why we use this analogy. Now let's take the example of what happened during the pandemic. Before the pandemic, organizations were hiring consultants so that they can start working remotely. They saw a lot of advantages of doing that. A lot of cost reduction, traveling, etc. And that was something. Working remotely was not easy. To those so many processes to change, and the culture especially. So they had to convince all the leaders, and then do some technology changes, etc. But what happened during the pandemic? In only 3 days, we achieved what we couldn't achieve before in 5 years, right? So the difference is that we were all pursuing the same thing. We had the same purpose in mind, the same objective. We worked together, and each one of us was an engine, right, for change. And we all collaborated, we all helped, and you know what? There was people that was organizing. Usually the human resources department was organizing this remote working, and by the hand with the IT department, etc. But since we all understood the purpose, it was much easier to manage change, right? Because everyone is on board, everyone is collaborating. That's what we mean by energizing. That's what we mean by disruption without destruction. And the key, as we've been telling you throughout this webinar, is putting the person at the center, the individual at the center of our change. Okay? And we need to professionalize our approach to change. And here are some recommendations to avoid change congestion. First, have a structured change management process, to have a capable project management office, to have a clear vision. And with leaders, we need to ask questions. We need to listen, respond, and guide. So we were talking before about leadership. Leadership is key. So we need our leaders to engage with people, to have conversations, to listen, and to guide, right? Because oftentimes we see change management where leaders just delegate, right? The communication and the implementation to other departments, to the HR department, to the change department, or the organizational development department. So we need leaders to, be in charge, to be ahead of the change. Then also we need a highly effective project team. That's why it's important to use these frameworks, this type of frameworks, and to these approaches, so that we have a team that uses best practices, and they are not improvising. So we should not improvise with people's lives, right? Because we are affecting people's lives. People may even decide to leave the company because they are so overwhelmed. They're not taken into consideration. So we're not affecting them, we're affecting also their families. So that's why we need to have a professional approach to change. Change agents, as most of you, I think, are familiarized with this term. People that are going to help us to communicate and to engage with people and to have these conversations with people and to discover those reactions, and so we can address them. These are usually people that have a leadership, informal leadership, not necessarily formal leadership. People prepared to operate. So when we're gonna, for example, we're gonna implement the new software, are we do we have all the people that are going to be impacted, are they already trained on the new software? That's something basic, but sometimes we don't see it as basic, so that may be a big mistake, not having people really prepared with the new processes, the training that they need. So all the training, that's totally very important, and monitor saturation and operational indicators. So that's very important to be aware of how much workload we're generating to the individuals, and this, because change takes time, and that's why we use this framework. We use the hourglass as an analogy of all the different aspects of change, and that change takes time, and people have a limited attention span and capacity, right? That we need to be careful not to saturate that. So what do we, in this hourglass representation, what we see here is that change starts from an organizational context, and we, as we were saying, we need to start from leadership, right? From executives, and from there we have a strategy for change, and this strategy for change has to be aligned to the culture that we want to see in our organization. Maybe we don't see the culture we have right now is not the culture we like, but this transformation project, business transformation, is going to help us with this cultural transformation. So we need to build a strategy around that. Okay, so for example, there was another client that they usually communicated their changes in a very formal way. They just sent the email, and they expected everyone to follow orders. There was not much communication with employees, and when we came in, we noticed that they wanted to be involve people. They wanted to be more close to people. So what we did is we created a podcast where we interviewed several employees, and so that they started to talk about the change and what was coming and what what they thought about, and this was really helpful for the organization. They learned about the change from their peers, right, from other employees, and that was a complete game changer. So that's just an example of a strategy that you can adapt to the change that you want to see in your culture. And then you go to middle managers, and a big mistake that I've seen a lot is that middle managers are informed at the same time as the rest of the employees, and then the employees, when they ask their managers, "Hey, I have some doubts about what they presented us today," and the middle manager says, "I'm new at this as well. I just learned about this today as well." So that's a very bad sign, a very bad message, that we don't want to do that. We need to, first, obviously, bring on board the executives, but then we also need to stress special attention with middle managers, and then we go to the rest of the company. So that's another, tip that we want to share today with you. And change agents are important, so they help us with these conversations and through these workshops. And finally, we need to have a project management office, very professional one, and change management leader. As Miriam was saying, maybe this change management leader is that maybe we're implementing the software, and the change management leader is not the head of IT, right? Maybe this is someone from other department, and that's okay. We need to treat change management as a strategic project, and we need to put very good resources and very good sponsorship in this project, so that the software implementation is more successful. And we are almost ending here. Just as a final concept, we just want to share the concept of resilient organizations. Being resilient is being able to come back from a difficult situation, right? Here's a couple of definitions, but why we are presenting here a windmill. Imagine that through this resilience that we are building, through this adversity and these changes that we are facing in our organizations, well, our people are getting stronger, right? They're learning about how to manage change. We are increasing their capacity for change through the way we are approaching change, and that way we are building a windmill. We're going to be stronger for future change, and we're going to have more capacity. And so now we need to make sure our people are not stealing from our competitors. Don't steal our people, right? Because we have trained them and they are strong with changes. And finally, in conclusion, without a professional change effort, initiatives are doomed to failure. So we need to be careful with that. Change is such an important, memorable part of life. How you touch a life increases or decreases the level of happiness and health. So we are dealing with people. We need to be professional about it because we are affecting their lives and their families. Have the structure and skills to manage change. In this way, we can have a long list of multiple changes, all of them ethically and effectively managed, so that we don't get into saturation and we are able to manage more and more changes. So thank you everyone for being here with us, and this is a final remark. We would like to invite you to click up here to schedule a call with us, and we can go deeper in these topics. We can share some other insights. If you have any questions, please feel free to write them in the chat. And also, first of all, mostly it would be would be better to have a conversation, and we are coherent with our approach, right? It's nothing like face-to-face conversation. So that's what we would like to have with you. So feel free to schedule. And here we also sharing. We have some training coming. So this is a certification coming. These are the dates. This is going to be online in English. So also feel free to click here and schedule a call so we can talk about it. So thank you everyone for joining us, and we're gonna let you know about our future conferences. We're gonna have additional webinars on change management. Thank you so much, Miriam, for being here. And also we're going to share the recording, so you can also share with anyone you want to listen to these insights. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you. Bye, Miriam.
Thank you, Albino. Thank you very much. See you soon.
See you soon.